You're listening to Searching for More, a podcast of the Diocese of Arlington. On this episode, Dr. Onalee McGraw, author of Liberty and Justice for All, Classic Movies and the Things That Matter in a Free Society, talks about what modern film has lost from the golden age and how we can rediscover truth through storytelling found in classic film.
The classical sense of drama has been lost in many, many cases.
Hear Dr. McGraw talk about the importance of classic film in teaching character and virtues. This episode's host is Billy Atwell, Chief Communications Officer of the Catholic Diocese of Arlington.
Onalee, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you, Billy.
So you've got a really interesting background and expertise here in classic film. How did you first get into film or classic film in particular?
Well, I would say, Billy, that it might have started when I was about 7 years old and became a classic movie fan growing up in California in the late 40s and throughout the 50s. And years later, when I was an educator working in the church, in fact, I had a Diocese of Arlington parent-teen program that I did way back in the 80s, and it was coming along after that I started thinking about the changes in our culture and how these wonderful films could actually be used to teach young people and everyone virtually great values. And so I started in, and then I had this incredible experience at a detention home, which we could talk about if there's time, and it was absolutely fantastic. It showed how everybody longs for truth, goodness, and beauty.
Yeah, I definitely do want to get into that here in just a minute. So you've been featured on some pretty, on the Al Cresta radio show. You've also been on Catholic World Report, and the 20th anniversary of Turner Classic Movies, they selected you to introduce a movie on television with Robert Osborne. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It was an incredible experience. I just wanted to try being a classic movie fan, and they announced the contest. You had to submit a 90-second video, and I chose Sidney Poitier's very first film, No Way Out, and I talked about how the film elevates human dignity. And whatever it was, they chose me. I was one of the 20. And then I was allowed to introduce 12 Angry Men with Robert Osborne. And we were told, give 10 of your movies that you want to introduce, and we'll pick it. And they picked 12 Angry Men, which I had piloted with middle and high school kids in a youth event. And it just was the perfect movie. And Robert Osborne was wonderful. He passed away a few years after that. And he was 82 years old when he was doing those interviews with us, 20 of us in 2 days.
What are some of you've mentioned a couple times, the kind of the virtues and the good things that we can witness in classic film. And I'm guessing that's kind of in contrast to a lot of the movies of today, where we're not seeing the same values communicated through. What are some of the values that you see communicated through classic films that are really particularly engaging for young people?
Right. Well, there would be two words that I would think of. One is spiritual truth and solidarity. In other words, the classic movies elevate us. They transport us, if you will, into a beautiful world where there's a moral order, where truth, goodness, and beauty are objective and knowable. And that's just true with the greatest of the movies. It doesn't mean all the movies of the classic era do that, but the great ones do.
Yeah.
The second thing they do is to make you feel, proclaim, really, that we live in a world that has a moral order and that we're part of that order. And so when we're watching these great classics, we're participants. We're not just observing a film and being entertained. And most of the films today, so many of them, it's just a matter of entertainment, escape, and just watching things happening to people. So the last point I would make on that is that the great classic films have, in the middle of the narrative, the character arc, that people are making moral decisions, and that is driving the story.
That's very interesting. I also think that with classic films, if you look back, from everything, from the 30s on, really, they have a simplicity to the production of them that keep you focused on who the character is, and
yes.
The actions only help to illuminate that. Whereas today, between kind of theatrics and CGI and all these things, it's more focused on what the character's doing, not who the character is. Am I misreading that?
Oh my gosh, you said it better than I could even say it. That is incredible. Yes.
Well, even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while, so thank you.
Well, honestly, that really is just the heart of it. And in many ways, these classic movies allow us to discover again the truth about human beings, who we are, where we're going, the fact that we share a common destiny. All of these kind of mysterious, intangible truths just flow through the film, whether it's a Wonderful Life or On the Waterfront, Key Largo, any of these great films that we've chosen to teach with. I'm going to remember that, Billy, what you said.
Well, I thank you. The movie that comes to mind for me, and it's not one of the ones you mentioned, although the ones you mentioned are certainly, great examples of that, was Angels with Dirty Faces with James Cagney. Oh. It creates this beautiful dichotomy of these guys that were, essentially raised the same, and then their paths depart. In this one instance, this one action kind of departs their path, and you see them become different people. And the question is, of course, well, why? What is it? Is it nature or nurture? Like all these kinds of things. I had to study it in college. That's part of the reason it came to mind, is it was in a class I was taking. But yeah, it embodies a lot of that. Do you, and maybe you haven't been exposed to it, but for the way production goes now, in terms of just the way Hollywood and other areas, Atlanta's got a lot of movie production and so on, is there intense thought about the character development and revealing the person, the virtues, those kinds of things in production, or is it kind of going to that issue that we were just discussing of they're looking to more convey actions and things rather than principles?
Well, I would think that it is a mysterious way that the classical sense of drama has been lost in many, many cases. And the whole idea of entertainment, like we said, putting things in front of an audience, in many ways selling the audience short, selling storytelling short. Storytelling is the greatest thing from when history began to interpret our world and to understand ourselves. And so I would think that probably they've just lost that. Yeah. There's this sense today of performance, platform, celebrity, and we started to lose this, many years ago. Mm-hmm. And what's so remarkable to teach with these films today, to teach middle school kids, high school, college, young adults, share them, is that what you've just touched on is that all of that has been lost in our culture as a whole. And so when they rediscover these things in the movies, it's like God has planted these beautiful images of truth, goodness, and beauty in our hearts. And so when we see Jimmy Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life, or we see the way that Marlon Brando finally stands up for truth in On the Waterfront at the risk of his own life, all these things, it's kind of like the kids today who might even never have been exposed to these films. It's kind of like they knew it all along because God has put the truth of it in their hearts. And so it's kind of like they just kind of see what they already know in a very mysterious way.
Yeah, classic films become classic because they withstand the test of time and people still talk about them. Are there any movies of the last, let's say, 20 years that you look and say, you know what, in 50 years, we're still going to be talking about that movie like we are talking about with On the Waterfront or It's a Wonderful Life or, A Raisin in the Sun or something? Are there any movies that you look and say, you know what, that one that pushes against this modern mold?
Well, I can only speak to very recently movies like The New Little Women would be an example. Everybody's talking about that. They're going to be very few and far between.
Yeah.
And then what I think is unfortunate today is that they come through our scene today, our cultural scene, and then they kind of pass through. Whereas the classic movies, thanks to Turner Classic Movies, really have been turned into a cultural legacy. So yes, I think that these movies do happen, but think of Little Women. I mean, this was the original Louisa May Alcott, so I doubt if they can do a movie like that unless they take like Lord of the Rings or Little Women or something that was done in an earlier time when you had a cultural, moral understanding of the arts and classic literature, classic drama, classic film.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go on this point that we were talking about earlier. And the story, this will sound weird at first, but you'll see where I'm going with it. The story of Bonnie and Clyde. In American culture, they were kind of glorified for a long time, right? It was kind of this attractive people living on the run and all that kind of stuff. And it was purely focused on these actions, this sense of freedom, and they could do whatever they wanted, and they were untouchable, and all these kinds of things. But the most recent version of it, and I can't even think of the name of it, unfortunately, of Bonnie and Clyde, really showed who they were. And it's The Highwaymen. That's what it was. I'm sorry, it was The Highwaymen, right? And it pulled back that curtain, and I remember watching that and thinking, it's an offensive story. The story of Bonnie and Clyde. Obviously it really happened. This isn't fiction, but the way it's been portrayed almost fictionalized them because it was just focused on this sense of freedom living on the. They murdered police officers, and so the movie demonstrated the vices of them in a very real and practical way, and it wasn't overly dramatized. They weren't using huge CGI effects and stuff. It was mostly a drama, and I think there is a profound way that movies can do that, and the classic movies do it better than modern movies. I think there are occasional examples, and you stated one, and that I was just, as you're talking, I'm thinking of The Highwaymen because it took this story that just glorified action, and then you realize there's people behind this. There were families devastated forever.
It's a wonderful example in our own time, which you're just telling me about, that proves the point of all the stories of the golden era that became great films. It's absolutely right, is that we see humanity, we see human nature as it is, not as some kind of illusion of freedom, expressive individualism on the one side, or fatalism, there's nothing we can do, which is what you see in Citizen Kane, for example, is just a movie about these things that happen to this person and to the other people. And it just unfolds. There's nothing they can do about anything. And you contrast that with Casablanca, where moral choice is at the very center of the action of the film, as Humphrey Bogart decides to give up his love for Ingrid Bergman. So those two films really do illustrate it as well, the difference between Citizen Kane and Casablanca. And you'll find many postmodern film critics will think that Citizen Kane is the greatest movie that's ever been made. But not everybody does. And what I think is interesting is that, and it's one of the reasons I work so hard to turn these films into educational vehicles for today's young people, because people with a very liberal, progressive sensibility, people with a very traditional conservative sensibility will come together in complete agreement on films like 12 Angry Men, It's a Wonderful Life, Raisin in the Sun, and they will proclaim these movies to be fantastic, wonderful, realistic, not realistic, but truth about who we are. Whereas with these other films, the earlier Bonnie and Clyde that you spoke of, many people did not like that film, even though it won the Best Picture Oscar. And people can't stand Citizen Kane, but others do love it. But the great films, everybody loves those films. Isn't that exciting?
Yeah, and it gets to what you said before about it. It speaks to kind of these inherent things that we all know, right? These inherent virtues that no one's going to disagree with the virtues upheld in these classic films. And, there's probably no better place to bring together non-controversial issues like in a prison system. And you piloted a program, and you hinted at this earlier, and I'd like you to dig into it a little bit. You were at a high security correctional facility. Talk about the program you created and instituted there.
Well, it was the beginning of a series of grants that our group, Educational Guidance Institute, we were awarded grants starting about the late 1980s and into about 2007. This was a period of time where there were government grants to teach abstinence education. And what I always did with it when we were fortunate enough to win the awards, which was 3 different times, we would teach virtue and character education. And that's what it really is about, not going on and on about diseases or anything like that, but basically reaching to the heart of people. So in 1999, Christmas of 1999, our program had just started, and we were down in Danville, Virginia, and we were down in the public schools of Danville, Virginia in the 7th and 8th grades. It was uphill because the program was brand new. But along the way, I became friends with a lady who was teaching in the detention home down there in Danville, Virginia. And she just agreed, based on friendship and love for her students, to try It's a Wonderful Life at Christmas time. And when she first showed the film, the young people, they were 17 and 18-year-old African-American young men with no fathers, no family. It was a high-security correctional facility. And they were very lonely, obviously, and depressed at this time, just as George Bailey was in the film. And so when she first started showing the film to them, and it was on this little TV over in the corner of the room in that time, of course, and they hated the films in black and white. They didn't know who Jimmy Stewart was. So they were just about ready to rip the VCR out of the machine. They were so angry that she had put that film on for them. And she just begged them. She said, please, you guys, give this a chance. And she said, there's this lady up in Front Royal, Virginia, who's asked me to try this out and just give it a chance. Will you? So she appealed to their heartfelt, beautiful sense of the good. She just appealed right to them. So they did give it a chance. And they're sitting there, and it goes through the whole narrative of Clarence is learning about George and who he is and what's happening in Bedford Falls. And she reported later to us and to the director of the correctional facility. She said, at a certain moment, they were totally engaged. And they said this was the best film they'd ever seen when it was finished.
Wow.
And I said, what was it, Jane? Tell me the time. Can I guess? And I just tried. I said, was it when George Bailey jumps into the water to save Clarence? And she said, yes. She said, because I know my kids. And she said, so many of them would want to end their own lives. and they're so sad, and they're so depressed, and they have no family, no nothing. And then it starts on, and it's like all the men on that transport died because you weren't there to save Harry. And it's like God has put in all of our lives people that love us, that care about us. And those young men could have felt that at that moment. We can't psychoanalyze them and say, well, why did you go from hating this film, ripping it out, wanting to rip it out of the TV, to saying it was so great? And so that was what she said, because she watched them. So when I heard this from Jane Clardy, my friend, mm-hmm. I said, I'm going to work on this as long as I'm able to do it. I knew then that we had really touched on something.
So is that a program that's still going on?
It's absolutely, we just did the program in the 6th grade in Our Lady of Grace School in Castro Valley, California, Diocese of Oakland. And the beautiful posters that these 6th graders did would just blow you away. And here they are in the 6th grade in after Christmas break of 2020. So this is about 2 decades after we started. And it's so exciting. The principal's excited. Shira Dawson, the 6th grade teacher, she's so gifted. And these kids have produced these posters. So we're going to reproduce it and have it for other schools to see. I have a friend who is a professor of computer science in a completely secular university. I'm still waiting for his report, but it's totally fine with me because he's very busy, but it happened. And he actually taught It's a Wonderful Life in a life skills course for freshmen, college freshmen, just the past Christmas season.
Oh, wonderful.
So I'm still encouraging everybody I can to embark on this, whether it's a parent group, a homeschool co-op, a private or even public school grade, 7th, 8th grade, 6th grade, high school. I even think these 6th graders, when you think of our culture today, they haven't yet really gotten soured on our culture, have they? They haven't really been, had to live in it, as difficult as it is, which is so much a survival mode as an autonomous self with your phone, in your hand. I mean, it's just very sad that our young people don't have greater opportunities to explore life, as in, like in these films.
Well, and like you said, and these films draw out the virtues that we all know to be good and noble and true, and they're great vehicles for that. So, well, listen, I wish you tons of success in all your different endeavors. You're such a great advocate for it too. I mean, the way you've described it, I think for everyone listening, it's I think everyone's going to want to go and pick out a classic movie or two, especially some of the ones that you've mentioned. So for those listening, if you would like to contact Dr. Onalee McGraw and ask her questions, advice, or find out more about some of the resources and so on that she's got, you can email her. It's Onalee McGraw, EGI, at gmail.com. That's ONALEEMCGRAWEGI at gmail.com. And you can also find her materials on Amazon. Just search on Amazon for Dr. Onalee McGraw, and you'll see those materials come up. You can also find those materials on AveMariaRadio.net. You can find some of those there's 4 different guides there, study guides and so on for, the feminine soul, classic movies, liberty and justice for all. Those kinds of topics are there, and I think, you would get a lot out of it. Onalee, I am so grateful for your time. Did I miss anything, or did we cover
You're
it?
a remarkable host.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you. But I'm grateful for your time, and I'm just grateful that you would share this topic with us. I think it's one where in society like we've got, where it seems like virtue's slipping away and nobody cares about it anymore, these classic movies can really kind of help re-inspire us.
We can help our kids, and we can help the people that are confused and searching and lonely and sad, and not have to go into the political or religious culture wars.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. Well, again, Onalee, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you, Billy.
All right, we'll cut there. Dr. McGraw, that was Onalee, excuse me. Thank you so much for that. That was really lovely. I enjoyed
you're
getting
remarkable.
to speak with you. Thank you. That's very kind of you. I love my favorite part of my job is what I'm doing right now, getting to interview people that have passion about a particular topic. Because, in my opinion, they make it easy. When they're excited about what they're talking about, I get to just let them do the work, and then I take all the credit for it. So.
Well, it means a whole lot to me, Billy, because I've been doing this a long time, and I sometimes wonder, well, can I keep doing this? Can I keep doing it well? And you have done a lot for me today. Honestly, I really mean that.
Thank you so much. And I hope, you see a response from it. We always want these podcasts to serve the people that we're interviewing as well. I don't want it to just be something we benefit from, but I do hope people purchase your resources and reach out to you.
Well, I do have Amber's email, and in fact, she's going to possibly have time to come and watch a movie with me and so forth. So if I get anything, how about if I, give a little bit of feedback to Amber?
That'd be great.
Would you like that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and we'll email you the link so that people can listen to it online. So if you have a network or friends and that you want to email the interview to, you're more than welcome to do that.
My gosh, I would love that.
Yeah, no, we'll make that easy for you so you can just send it straight to folks.
And then I can maybe make a little flyer or something. I would even do that myself because I'm going to be able to be in Louisiana on a Catholic radio show there. And you're my second one. And my first one was Al Cresta. And this is my second one. And I'm just so thrilled that God has given me this opportunity. So I can actually do a flyer then eventually that would have all three of these on one page, couldn't I?
Absolutely, yeah. And you could just tell people to search your name on the respective websites, and it would pop up. You wouldn't have to get too complicated with it either. Yeah.
I just put my name in and it pops up.
Yeah, like if you went to the diocesan site, you could do it, or if they I don't know if Al Cresta's show is also on a podcast form, but if people just go to like iTunes, for instance, in their podcasting app, they could search for you there.
Yes.
And so on. But but you can make it fairly easy.
I think it does. There's this archive or something on Ave Maria.
Yeah.
But see, it just impresses me so much that you found that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Amber, I forget how she got connected with you. How that
she got connected with me through Father Fred Edlison, who's her pastor at St. Agnes.
Yeah, he's a good friend of ours, too. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Well, Father Fred made it possible for me to pilot with college kids when he was chaplain.
Oh, at Mary Washington?
At Mary Washington. And Father Fred is best friends with my son, Father Steve. They were ordained together.
I see. My wife was in the campus ministry at University of Mary Washington when Father Edlison was there. She was like in leadership for them. So that's how she got to know him, and we've stayed friends over the years. It's a small world, isn't it?
Your wife was in the totally key area that it is.
Yeah.
And you can tell her, and maybe I can ask for your prayers, because my biggest dream is to get this to the priests who are campus ministers, or the lay people that are campus ministers in our colleges and our universities. Okay. That is the one area that I really believe in, Billy, because of the timing aspect. In other words, when you're in a college course, it was a miracle that this gentleman, my friend Bill Genero, that he actually did it in this life skills class at Kansas State. That's what it was. But it had to be in the finals section, the time of the finals. But with the campus ministry, they can just do that for the program.
Right, yeah.
And so I just really ask for your prayers, because that would be huge. And if your wife knows of any like or associations or organizations or priests that she might know or people that she might know who see campus ministry as a huge area of apostolate and happen to have it. I'm not saying she necessarily would have time, but that is the huge area where we want to reach these kids, these college kids. There's so much pressure. Yeah. And their professors are teaching them this crap that they are just a bunch of clump of cells, but be all you can be, get all your grades and pressure me to give you A's and B's, but you're just a clump of cells. It's so ridiculous, right?
100%, absolutely.
So anyway, that's...
So, well, listen, Onalee, again, thank you for your time, and feel free to reach out anytime.
Okay, Billy.
Right,
thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to Searching for More. If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a review on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Also, make sure you follow the Diocese and the Arlington Catholic Herald on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And subscribe to our YouTube channels for regular videos that inspire, educate, and inform about the Catholic faith in our diocesan community.